Hello everyone, welcome back to the Budget Sportsman. Thank you so much for joining me today on the channel. Today we're going to be doing another mount your own antlers kind of video, and what we're going to be doing today is mounting up this 6-point that my brother-in-law shot last year down in West Virginia. Now if you're new to the channel, I already have a video showing you how to plaster this and create the backing and create the covering for your mount to get it ready to mount to your plaque. I'll put a link to that video down in the description. I also have a video showing you how to cut out and build a broadhead shaped plaque with a picture frame built right into it that's perfect if you've harvested a deer with archery equipment. Today we're going to be making another plaque, but it's going to be a little bit more generalized to be used whether you shot it with a gun or bow, whatever. And I've already got the design drawn out here for you. And so here it is. The deer will mount right up here at the top, and as you can see down here we have a picture frame. And so it's going to be a nice generic mount that can be used with really any kind of a deer, and no matter what your equipment was that you harvested it with. Now, if you watched the video of the broadhead plaque, I used a 4x6 picture frame in that particular mount. On this one I had some space, and so I decided to go up to a 5x7 just to make that picture stand out a little bit more. So, got the plan drawn out, let's go ahead and get to making the plaque.
Hey everyone, I decided that instead of trying to explain how to do this whole entire mount out in the equipment shed where there's all kind of noisy tools and just not really the best environment for good audio, I thought I would do it in here and explain the process, but I'll be showing you footage from the workshop while I'm explaining the process. Now if you're wondering how just a minute ago I didn't have a beard and now I do, it's the fastest growing beard on the planet. No, the reality is I actually made this mount several months ago, but I'm just now getting around to actually making the video and getting it up on the channel. Unfortunately, what that means is the mount is actually not with me. It's with my brother-in-law hanging in his house. So I don't have it to show you, but we have the picture up here and have all the footage from the workshop. Now, the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're definitely going to want to draw out your plan on your board. If I haven't mentioned it already, I typically go to Lowe's and get the 1 foot by 2 foot oak project board, and it works out really well. I'm going to go ahead and put the plans up on screen here with all the measurements that you need. I'll also put it on my Facebook page, and I'll put a link down in the description to where you can click over there to Facebook and find the plans. Now, if everything posts correctly, you should be able to actually save the image from Facebook and print that image to get it in the full size scale that you need. And you could actually just cut out the plan, trace it onto your board if that's easier than drawing it out using the measurements. Now, before you go cutting into your wood and cutting out the pattern, there is one question you need to ask yourself, and that is, how am I going to hang this plaque on the wall? Now, there's a lot of different options. You can get, even just from the dollar store, you can get picture hangers, you know what I mean, like those funny little notch things you can nail on the back and then hang on a nail or a screw or a hook. One of the methods I've used in the back that I really like a lot better than that is called a keyhole hanger. I always get mine from Lowe's. I think you can get them at Home Depot as well. You can get them on Amazon. And they're a metal bracket, but it has, you know what I'm talking about, the little hole and then a slot where the back of a nail goes in there and slides up. So you put your screw into the wall, and then this thing slides on and locks into place. I really like those. The one disadvantage is that if you don't recess them at all, then you aren't able to get a flush mount up against the wall. In order to solve that problem, what I've done is I've gone to a keyhole router bit. And this does the exact same thing as the keyhole hanger. It has a hole with a slot where the head of a screw can go up in. It makes a really nice flush mount against the wall. But I do this on a router table, and so I do this first before I cut into my plaque. That way I have a nice straight edge to put up against the guide of the router table to get a nice straight groove cut in my board. Now, because I don't use a plunge router, I actually use the router table. What I do is I find my spot where I need it to go, and I actually drill a hole on the drill press first. You could use a handheld drill. That way I can lay my board upside down flat on the router table with the router bit up in that hole, and then just cut my groove without having to try to plunge cut on that bit. Now, once I've got my keyhole cut in, I'm ready to start cutting out the pattern. There's a lot of different tools you could use to do this, but I really prefer a jigsaw. I've tried a scroll saw in the past, but with the dense oak wood, it just cuts too slow, and it's actually very easy to get off course. I find that the jigsaw cuts quite a lot faster, and it's actually easier to make a nice smooth cut in my opinion. And good news is it's readily available, and if you don't have one, honestly, Harbor Freight probably has one for a pretty good price. At this point, you're ready to cut out the outer pattern of the plaque as well as the inner picture frame. You're probably going to need to drill a few holes through the inside of the picture frame where you can get your saw blade down through there and start cutting out. Please make sure you drill those holes on the inside of the frame. Also, it should be on the plans, but just make sure that if you're making a 4x6 or a 5x7 picture frame, whichever one it is, that you're not cutting at those dimensions. You need to actually cut a little bit smaller so that your 4x6 glass and your 4x6 picture are actually recessed in the back, and we'll discuss that more in a few minutes. Now, once you get everything cut out, it's looking really great, it's time to do some sanding. Now, you can hand sand if you want to, and if that's what you have access to, it will certainly work. I really prefer a belt sander, especially on this particular design, because it's so flowing with all the curves that the rounded part of the belt sander just seems like it's really nice. I don't stay in any one place too long. You'll sand away too quickly. But I like to just run all of those curved surfaces around that rounded edge of the belt sander, and it comes out really nice. I've also used Dremel tools with the little rotary sanders for some of the inner corners of the picture frame as well. Of course, some hand sanding is going to be necessary probably, and you also probably want to sand off the front face as well, and just do a whole lot of sanding. Once you get all the sanding done, you're ready to start making this thing look really nice. Now, what I did in this one is I routed off all the edges with a simple round over bit, both the outer edges as well as the picture frame. I've made this same design in the past where I used the round over bit for the picture frame, but I use a fancier bit around the edge. Totally up to you, whatever router bits you have access to, whatever you want to do. If you wanted to do just a round over, it would be a lot of work, but you could actually do a sandpaper or a file, maybe even start with a knife to take that corner off. I really don't recommend that, but if it's all you got and you really want to make this, certainly don't let that stop you. Again, it's all up to personal preference, but I decided on this one just to keep the flowing lines and just have the curved round over bit. Let me emphasize at this point that you really want to do this before you get into the next step of cutting out the back of the picture frame. If you do them in reverse order, the bearing of your router bit, like your round over bit, may not land where it's supposed to, and you may end up gouging in too far when you do the round over bit. If that didn't make any sense, don't worry, just make sure you do it in the order that I've laid out here and you'll be just fine. At this point, you need to prepare the rest of your picture frame. Hopefully you've already decided whether it's going to be a 4x6 or 5x7 frame. I decided on this particular mount to go 5x7. I'd never actually done that before, but I feel like it just actually uses up some of the space in the plaque that's already wasted, and you get a bigger picture that's a little bit easier to see. And so I think it actually turns out really nice, and that's my preference probably going forward. What I do at this point is I go to the Walmart or usually the dollar store and I try to find the cheapest picture frame that I can find of that size. And then I'll take the glass out of that frame and use it for my plaque. Now, you also need to find some kind of backing for your picture frame that's the same size as the glass. Now, depending on what frame you get, you might be able to use the backing that came with it. You might just be able to use a stiff piece of cardboard. Or in my case, I used a very thin piece of plywood type material, and I cut it out the exact same size as my glass. Once you do that, you need to figure out exactly how thick the glass and the backing are. And then I took a straight router bit and a regular router, and I routed out an indent for the glass and the backing to sit in the picture frame so everything sits flush. What I do is I take the glass and the backing, I lay it over the opening on the back side, I trace around it, and then I router all that out. Again, making sure that the depth of the router bit is set to the same thickness as the glass and the backing. At this point, you are going to have to decide how you're going to hold all of that together. Typically, I try to find a frame when I'm buying that has little screw-in type retainers, the little flaps that come over but screw in tight. And then I'll pull those screws out and I'll screw them in the back. Now what that does is it does mean that I don't have a flush mount against the wall anymore. But I find that because they're toward the bottom and because they're very small, it doesn't really hold it out from the wall a whole lot. To be honest, nobody sees the back. If you wanted to just take a piece of duct tape across and duct tape in your backing to your picture frame, there would be no problem with that at all, and you would get a nice flush mount. I'm sure there's some other great methods out there that you could use as well. Really, the only thing left to do at this point is just to stain it, the stain of your choice. I often use kind of a walnut colored stain, and usually a coat or two, maybe sometimes 2 light coats or 1 really heavy coat, all to your taste. At this point, you're ready to mount the antlers to your plaque, and I've got a whole other video about that, and so I'm not going to repeat it here. I'll just leave a link for you in one of these corners that you can click on and go right over to that video and finish up your mount that way. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoy these kind of videos, let me know. If you have a design that you want to see me make, let me know. I've got a set of antlers right now that I need to mount up, and I'm trying to figure out what design I want to do. So let me know down in the comments. And until next time, remember to get off YouTube and get outdoors into God's great creation.